We find ourselves in peaceful places, it's easier to relax, and you can connect to a deeper part of yourself more quickly and readily. And this is why so many people for many hundreds or thousands of years have left society to go live in the woods and write novels or do philosophy or do this deeper kind of work, either inner work or for humanity in some sense. And that this can be really valuable for all of us. And when we tap into these deeper places within ourselves, sometimes we find things that resonate with the outside world because it resonates within us. And this is one of those things that I'll be sharing today. It's something that is mirrored in many ancient wisdom teachings or traditions, and so this is it kind of keeps coming around because of modern science and quantum physics and astrophysics, and these different disciplines are matching, mirroring, uncovering the same principles that have been known for 5,000 years or more. And one way of saying it is we're everything in the universe is undergoing an alchemical process, that everything is transforming from one state to the next, like a seed turning into a tree. This is sort of the foundational experience of life in the physical universe. And what you might say about then spirituality or personal development or basically human evolution beyond our biological genome and our DNA, that there's something that happens when we undergo different experiences in life that are transformative for us, in the same way perhaps that the seed turns into an oak tree, that this seed of consciousness within us grows into a great oak tree with experience. And that knowledge of our place in this earth, on this earth, within the greater scheme of things, so to speak, sometimes feels too far removed for us to know why it's valuable or how to integrate it into our daily life. And when we experience these breakthrough moments, you might say, of feeling bigger than our ego or bigger than our identity or somehow connected to the whole of humanity or the whole of the cosmos, that we experience this glimmer of what you might call cosmic consciousness. And this is something that perhaps you might say is the next goal for humanity, is to realize that inherent oneness of mind, that we are all of one mind, that Schrödinger, who is one of the early pioneers in quantum physics, said that the total number of minds in the universe is one, and that if we're all of one mind or one heart, that we're all connected together, much more than we may already realize. And yet, when we return our awareness back to that source of interconnectedness, then we find how we can then relate to the whole in meaningful ways. And that's the real practical value of this, is it's literally giving us a sense of direction for how to live in a way that is connected to the biggest aspirations of humanity, or the biggest goals that we can aspire to, and yet living that in the present moment in a really simple and enjoyable way as best as we can. So, cosmic alchemy as a term is derived from alchemy and what you might say cosmology and cosmic consciousness. So the ancient Greeks, many ancient philosophers studied the way that the stars work in relation to our own selves. And as we tune in to that deeper aspect of ourselves that is somehow connected to the cosmos, we don't have to look very far to see that this is something that has been studied from many different levels throughout history. And yet, once again, what is the practical import for us? So, reality as we see it feels like there's layers to it, perhaps. Perhaps there's, you could say, the physical and the non-physical, that my thoughts or your thoughts, whatever thoughts are, don't really arise in the physical world. You could say that thoughts turn into behaviors, and behaviors turn into habits, and habits turn into character, and character turns into personality or identity, and somehow that has an effect in the physical world. But you wouldn't necessarily say that thoughts are physical, even if they have, say, a neurobiological corollary of the synaptic electrical impulse passing from one nerve point to the next. That if you were to say that's all a thought is, it would not really encapsulate what the human experience is. And that's sort of what we're getting at, is that there's the process of science reverse engineers something that we're already undergoing. And science is really about uncovering things and discovering the mystery in the same way, really, or a very similar way to spirituality or something like that, or these ancient wisdom traditions. And when we see the connection, this is really the most important point. And this is why I bring up cosmic alchemy. It's really a fun name to give to something that is one of the most important things that we can understand about our place in the cosmos. And that's essentially that we're in the center point of this experience of having come from the stars and having gone back to the stars. Alchemy is all about transmutation. So if we think about our awareness similar to something like a rock, that if a rock turned into an iPhone overnight, one might be surprised. But that's essentially what we've been able to do, and turn, through the process of our mind, the physical world into something completely different that's never been seen before. So if we think about that in the same way of our own consciousness, of turning, in the alchemical sense, the base metal of lead into the precious metal of gold, something like that, where in the same way our consciousness may start off a bit like a rock and then eventually turn into something like an iPhone, or something perhaps even infinitely more beautiful than that. And another simple way of thinking about it is reflecting on even the light of the sun. And this is where cosmic alchemy really starts to have a significance in understanding how we got here at the physical level, and how we return back to where we come from at a deeper cosmic or spiritual level. So it's all connected. That's the idea. And Isaac Newton, being one of the greatest scientists who ever lived, spoke at length about how we have a deep connection to the stars. That the stars produce the end results that are everything that we see around us. To say that we are star stuff or stardust is actually completely accurate, that the exploding stars and the gases that they produce eventually condense into hot gases, and then that turns into something liquidy like water, and then eventually that water and the minerals in the water condense until that forms like a hard center, and then that is how planets are formed, and then from the formation of planets we get all life on Earth. And so this very simple process of starlight condensing into everything that we see in a planet on planet Earth is how everything has gotten here. Everything has literally not just come from stardust, but from starlight. And as we return our awareness to this point of starlight, we can see that in almost every early culture there was some form of sun worship, some form of, at the very least, a deep appreciation for the sun, for providing warmth and basically everything that we need to be able to do what we need to do as humans. And so at the same time, perhaps you could say that there is an inner sun or an inner light, that this is where the wisdom traditions and different practices have gone through great lengths to understand what the meaning of this inner light is. And it's something that in our modern world is still very important, because we have this shifting awareness of religion and of spirituality and of science and of not wanting to be gullible and of wanting to be fully empowered and attuned to the reality that we believe we are living in. And at the same time, that reality is constantly being changed and questioned over and over and over again. So a really valuable way to approach this is to look at what ideas have stood the test of time, which ones are more believable than others, and then to test those even against other ideas, and at the same time to be reasonable in terms of your level of I guess both gullibility and of skepticism or even cynicism. That there's a groundedness and a calmness to understanding this higher level teaching approach that doesn't have to be so far out or so somehow unremoved from modern experience, that when we appreciate something about our own lives that makes us connected to the larger picture, and when we feel that resonance within ourselves, it doesn't really matter where the source of it is coming from. And at the same time, if you already have a practice of a spiritual practice, or if you are, a practitioner of a certain religion or other belief system, that this information in many ways can integrate into just about every belief system that exists, because it's the science of the planets, the science of the nervous system, and then when we get into the deeper personal or the individual experience of it, it's your own experience. There's no one who can tell you whether you did or did not have an experience. And that when we look at science, one of the few places that science has a lot of trouble with is the human experience. And this is in many ways why spirituality still has a place in our world, but that's just a word. Everything is just words. So when at the end of the day we're still using placeholders to try and communicate with one another what the actual meaning is behind the essence of what we're describing, and we use words to do that, but sometimes the words don't work out perfectly, so bear with me. So as Isaac Newton explained, with stars condensing into planets from starlight, and then all of biological life emerging from that planet and the starlight that created it, now being here billions of years after that initial process, we are essentially an alchemical product of that. And to think of ourselves, even just in this state as we are already, as the alchemical gold, that we don't, there was an early, I heard this from Sadhguru recently, saying that once you get to the human level, evolution becomes optional, that it's your choice, that we've made it to such a degree, such a level of refinement of our biology and of our nervous system and of our level of evolution, that now it's on us. And this is really fascinating to think about, that we have reached the level of self-awareness of what you might call choice, and that somehow that plays into this in some way. And whatever you might say about the questions of free will and determinism, and what neuroscientists or anybody else would weigh in on that, is that even if there is probability at play at all times in our experience of life, the underlying experience and impression of choice still gives us an opportunity to exercise the experience of having a choice. And this is probably why in many spiritual traditions there's similar sayings of give me the wisdom to change the things that I can, or the give me the power to change the things that I can, the courage. What is that quote? Get back to me on that quote. Give me the strength to change the things that I can, the courage to... Okay, anyways, we're going to move on. All right, so when we are now humans being in a human nervous system, we have this experience of understanding that the elements, as they've condensed and refined through the process of becoming a planet and becoming biological life, in the same way, those same elements are represented within us. So we have the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the air element, and then what you might call even the sound element or the light element. And each of these are represented in the spine in ways that are mirrored both physiologically and psychologically. The root energy center in the east, the chakra system, this is our primal survival center. This is reproduction, this is elimination, this is going to the bathroom, this is all of that. And our connection to the earth through our legs and through our feet. And psychologically, this is our sense of security, our sense of essential confidence, our sense of will to live, all of these most basic, raw survival instincts, really. And this is where we feel least free from choice. If you were to say, do you have the option to breathe? Do you have the option to drink water, etc.? It's not really, it's not so much about choice as it is just about doing what needs to be done. And when we move into the higher centers, it becomes more and more and more about choice. So as we release into the second energy center, moving from earth to water, earth is the most condensed form. When you see a rock, and you look at this rock, and you say, this is about as material of a thing as you could get in terms of this physical universe. When you look at the light of the sun, and you see the sunlight is about the least material thing in the universe. So everything is in between this basically sunlight and rock state of vibration, if you will. And we're all living in this harmonic scale, and it's embodied within us. We have light, so to speak, in our brains. We have earth. We have the awareness of matter, of the physical body as matter. And we're working on releasing our consciousness back from this awareness of ourselves as matter to the awareness of ourselves as light, or as mind, or spirit. And when we go through this process, this inner alchemy, this is the process of going from a star to a human and back again to the stars. That's why we call it cosmic alchemy. That the first state of this alchemical process has to bring us into this reality, into this densest form of reality, to experience material consciousness, to experience the absolute densest of vibrations, and then to release our awareness completely from these layers of vibrations, if you will, back to their source beyond light, really, from the source of light. And that our awareness changes when that happens. Our awareness of what reality is changes. And in simplest terms, this is why spirituality is connected to science, that it's a continuum in many ways, that it's a continuum of awareness, and that the scientific method right now, scientism in many ways, is largely appealing to materialism, scientific materialism, rational, Cartesian, in many ways even Newtonian. Science is physicalist, and yet that doesn't mean that the original, that Descartes or Newton were inherently as physicalists as the scientism that exists in today's world. And measuring consciousness, creating technologies that are informed by or interact with consciousness, is our great inheritance in terms of where we're going as a species in the short term, even scientifically. And as we become more attuned to these layers of vibration within ourselves, that when we say, what is spirituality? Essentially, spirituality is the science of vibration. That's why Nikola Tesla said, when you understand the secrets of frequency, energy, and vibration, you'll know the secrets of the universe. Man will make more progress in 10 years than he will have made in all of history. And the question is, are we there yet? And this is the reason why I share this. This is the reason why it's important to recognize, because it's steering the ship of humanity. Science, in many ways, has outrun our ability to develop wisdom. And science requires wisdom in order to serve humanity. That's all it is. So as we collectively develop a greater awareness that is non-dogmatic, that is universal, that understands principles that have been shared for thousands of years, that are all generally in agreement with one another, the names and forms may change, but the essence remains the same. So as we go through this process, briefly, we're moving through our earth element, our water element. This is our creativity. In the cosmos, the root is Saturn. The belly, or the navel, this is our sacral. This is, in many ways, our sense of flexibility. As we move closer to the center of the solar system, we move upwards in the spine. So Saturn being the furthest from the sun. Next we have Jupiter. This is flow. Then we move into fire, right? And this is reversing the process of the condensation of the elements into the material world. So as we raise energy up the spine in the Kundalini process, or however you want to say that, just raising energy in the spine, cerebrospinal fluid, raising the energy of the nervous system from the base into the brain, that we are reducing our awareness of ourselves as matter. It's like a weird way of saying it. Increasing our awareness of ourselves as something that is not matter, energy or spirit. And at the same time, we're still aware of the physical body, say in meditation or something like that. That doesn't change. It's the identification of it as the totality of experience. And at the same time, there is this forgetting of the body that happens when we sit long enough, say, to experience this when we're somewhere peaceful and relaxing. And so as we move up the spine just a little bit more, we move into the heart. Solar plexus, This is fire, this is digestion, this is Mars, this is our power, this is our ability to have discipline, have will. This is the material equivalent of spirituality, if you will. That when you see someone doing work, doing good work in the world, that's your power center, that's your solar plexus. It's the representation of the physical sun in the body in many ways. And it's very much connected to this spiritual eye, or the brain. So that's why we talk a lot about the gut-brain connection as being so significant. So, and it's not just about what you eat. It's emotional. It's connecting to courage and releasing fear, especially. So here in the heart, there's our heart in the energy, in the energetic kind of sense, and then we have our lungs. And these two work as our air system, essentially, to move that energy through the body. And this is Venus. In the cosmology, we skip over Earth, so to speak, because Earth is the reference point. So we go from Saturn to Jupiter to Mars to Venus. And you could say our center of gravity is Earth, which is what you might say is the center of gravity, the physical center of gravity in the body as well. But this is just how astrology works. Astrology being connected to cosmic alchemy, all of this being connected to science, because it's literally the condensation of matter or the condensation of light into matter, and then through this spiritual process, returning that awareness that has now been produced through this experience of becoming a human over billions of years of evolution, and then releasing our consciousness from the awareness that we are bodies or people living in a physical reality into the awareness that we are energy or spirit embodying a physical form, and that has energy or spirit has a will. It is a consciousness that exists independent of the physical form, and that's where we're going when we release this. We're releasing the consciousness that we are and its attachment to physical reality. And that this is the process of meditation being like death, or preparing for death. Death being something beautiful and not scary. Death being something that is the ultimate unknown and the ultimate release, or the ultimate relaxation. And as we practice meditation, there's many different practices. So I wouldn't want to discount one or the other, but what many different practitioners say from all these different places is essentially relax. That's all that we're really the biggest thing that we're focusing on. And as we relax, we release what is not us. And everything that's not us is, when you think about muscle tension, whether it's in a yoga class or just you're laying down to go to bed at night, when you release all of that and you let it go, you're no longer the body. You're done with that. And it's not scary. When you're going to sleep, are you scared to fall asleep? No. I mean, for the most part. So letting go of that, fear, once again, and returning back to that original state, that state where we are beyond our awareness of perhaps even of thought itself, that of anything of the mind or the body is just a projection, once again, of that light from that original source. And the more we identify with the source of that light, rather than even with, you could say like identifying with the light is beneficial, and even there is even what's beyond the light, which is, if we're existing in a world of vibration, then that's the void, the vibrationlessness, that state, that the cosmic womb, where everything is birthed from, and yet in and of itself is like this, there's like a peaceful nothingness. And this is the primary waters that moved in the Bible, the first waters, that there's this ancient sort of mythology, or speaking in different creation stories of waters. And it is a beautiful image of when God breathed and the waters moved, and the waters were somehow this original place of creation, sort of like when you think about a womb as being full of water and also life. Okay, so moving up the spine, going from the heart into the throat. Heart, of course, is love. Our hands are connection to the world. This is our experience of being in relationship psychologically, being connected to others in meaningful ways, and opening and expanding the heart. This is the median point in many ways between this idea of the lower three energy centers representing the physical world and the upper three energy centers representing the energetic or spiritual world. And so as we relate to this, it's all connected, it's all working in harmony and tandem as a system. Once again, connected to the planets: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury. Mercury being sound. If this was air, we've moved out of what we'd think of as normal matter into the vibration of sound. And sound being something that carries the word truth, our ability to stand up for ourselves and speak from our hearts, our ability to share what's meaningful to us and to not hold that back, to be able to pay attention and to be present with what is in front of us. In many ways, this is our sense of energy, inner peace. It's the thyroid gland, it's the vocal cords, even just generally the muscles of the neck. And as we connect to this essence within us, there's a creativity to it. Once again, what we said about the third being connected to the sixth, second being connected to the fifth, first being connected to the fourth. Running the legs, the first, beneficial for connecting to the heart. The second, now, this is our water, once again, our ability to flow with words being connected to the fifth. So we can see there's overtones, there's octaves, that even from that understanding of vibration, that like a rock is vibrating at a denser frequency than water. Gas is vibrating at a less dense frequency than water. Fire is somewhere between air and water in its density of particulate, if you will, that there's solid being combusted into gas, so to speak. So there's this appreciation for matter as being on a continuum, and it's connected to consciousness in the sense that there's a correlate for every material. So it's like as above, so below. What is the psychological correlate of earth? It's being grounded. It might also be being stubborn. What is the psychological coordinate of fire? It could be being very strong-willed or competitive or just driven, or it could be anger. So as we understand that this exists within all of us, that these states of consciousness exist as correlates of the elements, and we understand that we're then once again returning now back to this, back to our source, in light, essentially. That you could say the brain is like a galaxy. It has more connections than there are stars in the Milky Way. That it's in many ways it's our radio receiver. It's our way of connecting to thought. It's our way of receiving information, determining what's best for us, and bringing that into existence once again by releasing a thought into the body. It can then be performed as an action and take manifestation in the physical world. And so when we understand that we are this bridge, when we're bridging this gap between whatever is beyond the physical world and the physical world itself, that when you look at human beings and what we do, there's no question that we're extruding this mind stuff into the world and like making an iPhone out of rocks. Like, there's no other species that does that, and the closest species that gets to tool building is like beavers building a little dam on the river out of wood sticks. And we built New York City and put ships on the moon and everything else, and it's not that far-fetched to see that we're clearly tapping into a domain of awareness that is beyond physical. And there's a lot to be interpreted about that, and yet it's more important to have a direct experience of it, to be in the realm of theory is valuable at some point. It's not entirely useful if it doesn't serve the individual's immediate experience. And that's why we learn, that's why we teach, that's why we go to some teachers rather than other teachers, and that is what it is. And we find this experience of knowing that we are here to be empowered and to connect to what you might say is the meaning of life from the beginning of time. There is no recognition of time as having existed in the way that we think of it as existing. We measure time. We say that, even time and space are these things that we can measure, and yet at the same time, does it matter? To see the way that our language influences the way that we speak. So when we say, does something matter, this is a way of placing a material consciousness on an idea. Kind of a weird thought. At the same time, we're using a temporal linguistic mechanism to describe a similarity between two ideas that are not bound by time. So it's kind of a funny thing to think about. When we move beyond the consciousness or the awareness of space-time as existing something like a projection on a movie screen you could even say just a movie screen is a two-dimensional screen, right? You could have the vertical axis being space, horizontal axis being time, and we're somewhere plotted on that graph. And quantum physics says, okay, it's like slightly more complicated than that. We have 11 dimensions, but instead of 2 dimensions, there's just 11 of them. But then beyond that, we know there's something beyond that, and that's what basically every quantum physicist, revolutionary scientist for the last 100 years has been saying, that this is not something that is, for people who are in just in like a spiritual or religious area. And in many ways, this information may be more challenging for different religious or spiritual beliefs. I don't really know. It's just a matter of experiencing that space within yourself of what of this matters to you, what of this is true, how do you integrate it into your life, why does it matter. I love it because it's like music, that when we can see how there are different levels, different octaves, different overtones of vibrations within us, that these correlate to the elements, that these correlate to these planetary systems, that we could potentially use astrology as a system for understanding our inner psychological nature, the way that we relate to other people, as well as understanding that science is connected to alchemy, that Newton was primarily that first person to make that connection, to be, the last of the magicians and the first of the scientists, inventing chemistry, inventing calculus, and also being deeply embedded in everything that I've just shared with you, that there's a strong connection to our inner universe when we connect to the experience of what is really happening in science and in the outer universe. That it's beautiful that they're connected, and it's profound to be able to see that that doesn't have to be systematized by, or at least monopolized by, any one system. That whatever the system is that's emerging is an inherent system that is based on direct observation or direct experience. And it's for each person to have, and that it's embedded within our biology, within our nervous system, within our mind, our experience, our humanity. And to be one with that, and to be one with creation, is our birthright, to become one.